everyone, and welcome to Daily Newspaper Analysis, which is presented to you by LawSikho. Today, we will discuss two articles at length. The first article is from The Hindu, which is titled as Meth, Gold and Arms, How Assam Rifles is Trying to Stop Them from Entering Mizoram. This article talks about the important role that is played by the Assam Rifles, which is one of the paramilitary forces of India, and what are the challenges that are faced by the Assam Rifles. The second article is from the Indian Express, which is titled as Persecuting the Persecuted. This talks about the state of the Rohingya and what stand has India recently taken upon the situation of the Rohingya coming into India from Myanmar. And finally, we have the News in Flash column. Before moving further, let's have a look at the Project Maverick, which is almost free CLAT preparation course from LawSikho. So if you're preparing for CLAT 2021 or 2022, you can enroll yourself for this course at just cost of rupees 100. The link to this course is available in the description box below. Let's see what is the multiple choice question from yesterday's discussion. Which of the following countries is not a member of the Quad? Your options are India, USA, France, or Japan. You can write down your answer in the comment section below. This is the descriptive question of the day. Discuss how digital payments can lead the market of the future. What steps have been taken in this direction so far? On this note, let's start our discussion for the first article for the day, which talks about cross-border drug smuggling and the challenges faced by Assam Rifles. So the Assam Rifles, which is one of the paramilitary forces of our country, faces the twin challenges of checking smuggling and preventing illegal crossings into Mizoram, and also oversee the Kaladan Multimodal Transport Project. Now, of all these, Kaladan Multimodal Transit Project has already been discussed in a newspaper analysis before, but we'll take it up again. Let's see that what are the increasing challenges that are being faced by the Assam Rifles. So it's about the increasing drug use in Mizoram. As we know that Mizoram is the northeastern state that has a very long border which it shares with Myanmar. And Mizoram has a porous border and a free movement regime up to 16 kilometers on both the sides. So here, basically there is a free movement agreement between Mizoram and Myanmar, which allows the movement up to 16 kilometers on both the sides. And thus this free movement regime has made the border very much porous, and thus the movement across the border has become very easy. And so Mizoram also, as we know, has the longest border with Myanmar among the 4 northeastern states. Now, amongst all the 4 northeastern states that share the border with Myanmar, these are, if we move downwards, if we move upward from the downside, we have Mizoram, then we have Manipur, Nagaland, and then we have Arunachal Pradesh. Of these, Mizoram has the longest border. Since 1984, 1,645 people have died due to drug abuse, and that is why the situation has become very serious. And if we talk about 2020 alone, then 67 have died and 268 have been arrested on drug-related charges in 2020 alone. And if we talk about 2019, the narcotics, including the methamphetamine and yaba tablets worth rupees 368 crores were recovered. So with this, we can see that how huge this problem of drug smuggling and drug consumption has become across the India-Myanmar border, specifically in the state of Mizoram. Now here, the reason is that the high literacy rate of 19.2%, but there are few jobs. Now this has become a big problem that Mizoram has a very high literacy rate, which we know is 91.2%. But on the contrary, the employment rate, as in the people who really have real-time employment, is very less, due to which they get engaged into such unproductive activities, and thus they get indulged into such problems like the drug abuse. Then the second issue that the Assam Rifles has to go through is the Kaladan Multimodal Transport Project. Now, if we talk about it, this idea was conceived in the year 2003 at a cost of about 3,200 crores. The Kaladan project seeks to ease India's access to the Southeast Asia and provide an alteration route between Northeast and the rest of India. Now, by the virtue of the location of this Kaladan project, as we know, it connects the Kolkata port in India, which is there in West Bengal, to the Sitwi port, which is there in Myanmar. Now, this gives India a two-way route. Firstly, if India would want to move towards the water route using the Bay of Bengal, then a direct connection can be drawn with Myanmar and the other Southeast Asian world. Also, if at all India would like to move towards its northeastern states by not with the traditional route which is there through the Chicken's Neck, which goes through West Bengal, and then we enter it through the state of Assam. Rather, it can also use Myanmar and the other routes from Myanmar to enter the northeastern states from the different side. Thus, the project has three legs. First is the Kolkata Sitwe port, which is there in Myanmar, and the total distance is of 539 kilometers. Then we have an inland waterway from Sitwe to Paletwa, which is 150 kilometers further. And then we have a land route from Paletwa in Myanmar to Zorinpuri in Mizoram. That is why the Kaladan multimodal project, this is the reason why is it called as a multimodal project, because it involves more than one modes of transportation. As we can see that it also has a waterway and as well as a land route. So it is being executed by the Ministry of External Affairs and it's being monitored by IRCON, which is the Indian Railway Construction Limited. If at all we look at the map of India and Myanmar, it would be clear for us to see that this Kaladan multimodal project starts at the Kolkata port, which is at the Hooghly River in Kolkata, and then it takes a distance of 539 kilometers directly through the Bay of Bengal and reaches the Sitwe port. Then from Sitwe port, we have a route till Paletwa, and then further to Zorinpuri border crossing, which is there in Mizoram, and then finally it ends till Aizawl, which is the capital of Mizoram. With this, let's discuss the second article for the day, which talks about India's stance on Rohingyas. Now, as we have already discussed this issue several times before, we will only take this up in a very short and crisp discussion. So recently, the Supreme Court of India has disposed of an application seeking the release of Rohingya refugees who are detained illegally in a sub-jail in Jammu and has threatened deported to Myanmar. Now, as we know that this time, India has not been very open with the acceptance of the Rohingya coming from the Myanmar, as we know that due to the military coup which has taken place and the complete uprooting of the Myanmar democratic government, a lot of Rohingya people from the Rakhine province of Myanmar have fled towards the Indian states to save their lives. Now, in such a situation, when generally India is considered to be a country that boasts and that supports the human rights, surprisingly, this time India has not been very supportive of taking these people in, and thus, instead of even referring to them as migrants, India has taken the stance of calling them as illegal immigrants. And that is why a petition was put forward in the Supreme Court of India to release these people who were illegally detained in these sub jails. But this has been completely quashed by the Supreme Court. With this, it becomes important for us to understand as to who are Rohingyas. Rohingyas are the stateless Indo-Aryan ethnic group who reside in the Rakhine state or the Rakhine province of Myanmar. We should note that the Rakhine province of Myanmar shares a very close and touching border with Bangladesh as well as some parts of Mizoram as well. So they were denied citizenship under the Myanmar nationality law in 1982. And that is why their status of citizenship remains to be very in the swing position. So they're described by the United Nations as one of the most persecuted minorities in the world. Now, as we know that amongst other persecuted minorities are the Uyghur Muslims of the Xinjiang province of China, then even, many a times the Muslims in some countries as well, where they're in minority, and many a times some Hindus or Sikhs, as we take example of Pakistan, fall under the persecuted minorities. By persecuted minorities, we mean that those people or those communities which are not treated well by the virtue of their small number of the community, and they are treated very, rashly by the majority of that particular area. And thus, United Nations has said that Rohingya are one of the most persecuted minorities of the world. About 40,000 of the Rohingya entered India in waves and settled in refugee camps across the country. And recently, 170 of them were detained in Jammu after a biometric verification drive. So if we at all legally or constitutionally try to understand the merits of the Supreme Court order, there are some issues which can be sought in the Supreme Court order. Firstly, the Supreme Court says that the refugees cannot invoke Article 32. Now, as we know, that Article 32, which was considered as the heart and soul of the Indian Constitution by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, which gives us the right to move directly to the Supreme Court in case any of our fundamental rights are violated. So, the Supreme Court says that Article 32 is not a matter of right which can be claimed by the refugees. But we should note that Article 14 and Article 21 are very much available to every person, including the refugees. If at all, we note the language of Article 14 and Article 21. Article 21 reads as that no person shall be denied right to life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. Now, here, when we make use of this word person, it not only includes the citizen like you and I, rather, it also includes refugees, foreign nationals, etc. And similarly is for Article 14, which is right to equality as well. And thus, these people, even though they are refugees, they will be considered and they will be having a claim under Article 14 and 21 of the Constitution. The Supreme Court has also ignored India's binding commitment to the non-refoulement and obligation in prohibiting genocide. Now, as we know that if we talk about the non-refoulement and obligation in prohibiting the genocide, it means that if at all it is a matter of life of such refugees, then India should not be taking such steps which can be detrimental for the safety of these people. Also, India, along with Panama and Canada, were the force behind the adoption of the Genocide Convention in 1948. And we must note that the Rohingya people who at all have fled towards the Indian borders to save their lives from any kind of persecution that was taking place in Myanmar, they were severe victims of genocide over there. And even in the International Criminal Court, also some proceedings are going on against various officials and authorities of Myanmar that had conducted various genocides on these Rohingya people. And that is why it becomes contrary that India itself, being a force of adoption behind the Genocide Convention of 1948, is not taking steps forward to help these particular people who are victims of genocide. Also, the Gujarat High Court in the case of Tair Abbas Habib Al Kotaifi versus Union of India held that this principle of non-refoulement prevents expulsion of a refugee where his life or freedom would be threatened on account of his race, religion, etc. And thus, if India does not take care of this principle of non-refoulement, then it shall stand arbitrary or it shall stand violating these principles of international law and justice. Also, the same idea was reiterated and upheld by the Delhi High Court in Dong Lian Kam versus Union of India case in 2016. With this, let's see what do we have for news and flash today. World Haemophilia Day is today, that is on 17th April. April 17th is observed as World Haemophilia Day to bring the global bleeding disorders community together. So if you talk about hemophilia, it is a rare disorder of the blood in where the blood doesn't clot normally because it lacks sufficient blood clotting proteins. For example, vitamin K is very essential for making the blood clot. And if at all, just imagine a situation that if you get hurt and your blood is not able to clot by itself. So definitely it will cause into immense blood loss. So the theme for this year is adapting to change. So this was all for the day. We hope it was a good and informative session for you all. Thank you so much for staying tuned with LawSeco.